Good afternoon, all. Hope you are doing well. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Awesome, awesome. My name is Krista McClure. I serve as the Director of Programs here at Arts Business Collaborative, and I'm honored to be able to share this space with you all and to hear a little bit more about Black artists as businesses and financial literacy. I am multitasking to my best ability, so managing kind of the chat, engaging in conversation with the panelists that we have here, which I'll introduce them here in a moment. But feel free to just jump into the chat, drop your name, if you want your business or the work that you might be doing, and then your location. That would be really great and awesome. So again, I appreciate folks joining us here today. Some of you I know, some of you I'm going to learn to get to know more about. I am actually based in Detroit, Michigan. While Arts Business Collaborative is headquartered in New York, we are a national organization. We support Black, Latina, and Indigenous communities through the arts and STEM lens. And that looks like fiscal sponsorship, but that also deeply looks like supporting businesses through a series like this, Help Desk, but also through other engagement activities that we offer that we'll be able to speak a little bit about when we kind of begin this conversation. There'll be some little bit of tidbits to give you an idea of what the direction we're going. So I'm going to introduce to you all first Kayla Harley, who is wearing this lovely pink blazer and is enjoying the beautiful sun. But go ahead, Kayla, take it from here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us. My name is Kayla. I am from the Washington, D.C. area, and I am, among many things, an artist. I am a creative teaching artist, consultant, producer. I am the founder of Creative and Equal Opportunities Incorporated, or CEO Inc. for short. And after having had an extensive performance and touring career, I then started a campaign on financial literacy called It's Lit. Through my personal relationship with struggling with money, I just took a turn, or as we now know, the pandemic term to call pivot, very sharply and jumped headfirst into my journey of learning the things that I was not taught in school. So pretty much It's Lit campaign is about that. And I'm just happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Kayla, actually, if you have a link for the It's Lit, could you drop it into the chat for folks if they want to look into it and learn more? That's really awesome.
Absolutely.
Great. And then I will pass it over to Pamela and Dyalekt.
Hi. Peace. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all. Thank you for joining us. Should I share a screen?
Yeah, I guess
The
you
whole
have to
thing.
pull up our stuff. Is that easy? Yeah.
We just have a little deck.
We like the readers, for the readers, the listeners.
I'm a very visual learner, so I like seeing things while people are talking. Anyway, hi, I'm Pamela Capalad. I'm a certified financial planner and accredited financial counselor. I'm the founder of Brunch and Budget, which is a financial planning services firm. We actually work with a lot of artists and creatives on their finances, and I am the co-founder of Pockets Change.
Hey, my name is Dyalekt. I am one of the artists and creatives that we work with. I also am a co-founder of Pockets Change. It's a program where we use hip-hop pedagogy to teach kids about personal finance. As of this year, I will have been a hip-hop educator and MC for 20 years and I think 6-ish months. I'm forgetting exactly when the start date was. Yeah, I know, over 20 years at this point. And our whole purpose is to make it so that we can live under this nonsense. We're told that we have to be starving artists, that we have to pay dues, but we're not in a union necessarily. I mean, some of us have our artist unions, but if you're not in a union, we don't need to be paying dues, and we don't need to be starving artists. We don't need to have any of this in our arts world, in our education world, and in our personal lives. It's rife with discrimination, exploitation, and abuse that makes most of us want to tap out. Now, I don't want us to tap out. We're artists. We're the ones who create the meaning, the understanding, the joy, and the criticism of the world. So we are empowered to get our finances in order so that we can say our message without having to be stressed about being able to eat the next day.
Yes, I'm actually going to, now that you say all this, I'm gonna
I just want to
skip
throw
past all
all
that.
that stuff
This
out
is
there.
all info about us, but like our big belief, I've been in the financial services industry since 2008, right at the beginning of the first recession, and worked with high net worth clients. And as I've gone more into the finance world, started working with a lot more artists and creatives, and Dyalekt and I have really started digging into the racial wealth divide, which we can touch on later. One of the things that we've learned is that taking control of your finances is a revolutionary act. I've seen the system take people out. If you have a bad credit score, if you don't file your taxes, if you don't have an estate plan, there's so much shame around this. And all this shame is designed for us to just not be in the system, even though the system is taking advantage of us.
When we talk about, when we really jump right into it, when we talk about taking advantage and dealing with the system that puts us on our backs, this quote comes from Huey Newton of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, who would tell his members, to the best of your ability, get your papers together, because the cops are going to run up on you, and if you don't have it together, they're going to put you in jail. And nowadays, they don't have to. Because if you have a bad credit score, you can barely get through society. You don't have to be run up on by the cops. They still do it,
Yeah.
But even in your capacity as an artist, as a human being, you might not be able to get a job if your credit score isn't right.
Yeah. And so the crux of our mission is that whether you want to be a millionaire or change the system, we're here to show you how to do it without feeling used.
Yeah, and we'll get into more of the things. Oh, I didn't even say my art. I'm a hip hop MC and theater maker. I guess I said that in the stuff. I don't know.
Dyalekt likes to say I'm a finance artist, which that's very nice. I like that.
Yeah, she be MCing y'all about finance. We're all arting in some kind of way, but y'all know this because y'all are artists.
All right. Well, thank you for kind of dropping and like really diving right in. I was like, maybe we can like take it slow. We're like, no, we've got to get right to the knowledge and let folks know kind of the pulse of where we are. So I appreciate folks who are chiming in the chat, dropping in kind of their name, their location, if you so choose. No pressure. I really want to kind of set the tone that the focus of this conversation is really going to be centered around artists. Many of you on this call are artists, and from the art industry. Artists, in my mind, being that I actually am not connected to art at all, like I think it's the embodiment of this spectrum that looks like storytelling, that looks like modular use of like your hands and like design of development, clays, materials, historical citing, right? Like at K Kennedy, I know that that's your work, and I love that work that you're doing. So just like as there's questions that you have, and you might already have them right now, that you're like, I need to know this thing, please drop it in the chat, or feel free, if you can on your end, to raise your hand. I will definitely pause. Pamela and Kayla also have the opportunity with Dyalekt to kind of make this conversation engage and involve you all just as well. So that way you're a part of this conversation. This is a learning opportunity for you, really, as it is much for me, because I don't really know much about art. It looks great. It's beautiful. It's amazing. I appreciate it, but I'm here to learn alongside you all. So I know that we kind of talked a bit, we like to do a little rehearse. So we ended up having a little run of show yesterday, which really was supposed to be like more of like 30, 45 minutes, ended up being like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. But it was because there was like this wide range of things that we could talk about, right? And so it is kind of around, art makers and understanding like the impacts of, or the effects, right, of AI, which is a conversation we had last week. We kind of talked about it a little bit. I know that'll be an item that we'll kind of cover very loosely, just because there's so much that has to be learned and discovered. Even just kind of understanding the notion or the theory around like scarcity, especially from artists of color, right? Like this fear of what is yours, and kind of the rootedness of doing that work, and the time, the commitment, the passion, the history, all of those things that pour into it. And then really even kind of starting to dive in to talk also about like, how do we hold kind of philanthropy or foundations, folks accountable for like our work, and how do we put a price point to that work, whether it's a product that you're selling, whether it's a service that you're offering, and so forth. So again, I'm going to let Kayla and Pamela and Dyalekt kind of punt this conversation back and forth. I'll probe and ask questions because of my ignorance, but I certainly want everyone here to also engage as well. So Kayla.
Yeah, I'll just jump right in and say that I love how Pam and Dee framed it as revolutionary work to get involved in finance as an artist, right? Because I find myself constantly in this campaign persuading artists, hey, here's why you might want to pay attention. You might want to get involved in government. You might want to do more research. You might want to think about policy. And for maybe an artist who's in a Broadway show, who's on tour, who's creating, they're looking at their craft and they're like, why should I look up and pay attention to the world? I've always been rejected. This identity of being marginalized, right? Is an identity that artists have been groomed to wear. So to even think about being a part of society in that way is something that is not common. But now that they framed it as a revolutionary undertaking or really overtaking, it is empowering and it puts you back in the seat of your life. So I just wanted to ping that to say that's awesome framing, for sure, y'all. That yes.
Ooh, I'm just writing back
I
in the
know.
chat to put you back in the seat of your life. Ooh. I might have to get you on a track.
That's really good.
Oh, so you already got it. You already got it. You passed the paper to me. See.
No, that's been it as
that's what capitalism is. So we've been doing this whole thing. One of Pam's financial planners in her business Brunch and Budget got called out by this like right-wing blog who was like talking about anti-capitalist financial planners. They're like, how can you be an anti-capitalist financial planner? And I started really thinking and doing a lot of researching and reading about like, those of us who deal directly with money work, how can we say the work that we do is anti-capitalist? Because basically the whole capitalism thing is not buying, selling. It's not even competition. It's taking away our ability to have choice, right? You go and I always say to kids, if like, you're like, oh, I don't like Nike. I don't want to buy Nike because I don't agree with their values. I'm going to buy Converse instead. Well, Nike owns Converse. So what you going to do with that, right? So the work that we're doing here is making so that people understand the power they have, the choice that they have, and the work that they need to do to maintain the choices we have, which is curated by artists. Yeah. Artists are the ones that, for good and for ill, have given and taken away choice in this world. Before the, the overdraft protection, which y'all know is like a gangster racket with them hitting your kneecaps, before that came out in 1990, all through the 80s and the 90s, if you were watching TV, you saw a TV show where somebody was at the register and they were about to buy the dinner for the date or the toy for their kid, and the card gets declined and they cut it up in front of them and everybody's watching. They're not embarrassed. As I'm saying this, all of you have seen at least 10 shows that have had this scene. And by the time they came out with overdraft protection, we was primed and ready for it.
Let's talk about that too, right? Because this is a Tinder profile. This is someone's Tinder profile.
So real one.
These are their stipulations to date you. The first one is
the slide has.
Yeah, I was like, wow, you just walked us right in that. You must be 5'10" taller to ride. Your credit score has to be more than 700.
That's the second thing.
That's the second thing. They're like, you better have a good credit score. You can't date me.
That's more important than the military pothead thing.
Yeah. So credit scores were created in 1989. Not even one. They were created after I was born. Not even one generation ago. Overdraft protection was born when Taylor Swift turned 1. These things have not been around that long, and they have somehow taken over our lives and also have become markers of morality. You can't date someone if your credit score isn't good enough.
Back in the day it was, I gotta have a job if you want to be like, I get that, nothing going on but the rent and all that stuff. But nowadays people are like, what? I can't trust you as a human being. I can't be intimate around you if you don't play this game right.
Oh, I know. Oh, it feels so icky. And when I learned that credit scores weren't that old, I was like, wait, why am I letting it rule my life?
Caveat, by the way, the stuff that they did before credit scores was not like
it was even more racist.
It was worse. It was like kind of almost literally predicated on racism.
Yes.
Wait, I'm gonna say this part. Okay, we'll stop. If you watch an old Western movie, the only part of a Western movie that's actually true is, that little squirrely guy with a notepad and glasses. He's always like asking people weird questions. He's often the background of these kind of movies. That's the person who would determine whether or not you were worthy of getting credit. They would write stuff like, this person does business with Jewish people, so maybe we shouldn't work with them. Like straight up, we literally read ledgers like that of old school ways they did it. So it wasn't awesome before, but this stuff isn't great either.
It's true. It's true.
We can get hype on all the historical. We can go through if any of y'all want to get deep into that.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that we did a deep dive on the racial wealth divide, and a big part of the reason why is a lot of the clients that we are working with at Brunch and Budget were people of color. And previously I'd worked in wealth management where the clients were predominantly white. And one thing that I realized working with my clients of color, just noticing anecdotally, is that I wasn't equipped to help them with their finances. I like to say that a lot of my clients of color are first generation something. They're first generation in this country, first generation college graduate, first generation to be able to own a home. A lot of our clients who are artists are also first generation artists. There's no history of being artists in their family, being creatives in their family.
They'll have the creative thing. I mean, that's my family. I got all sorts of musicians in my family who are not able to do that, and not even like as a hobby, really, because of all the stuff that gets in the way.
So they were more likely to have student loan debt, more likely to have credit card debt, less likely to have a history of home ownership in their family, less likely to have a safety net to be able to go back home. And that required very different financial planning needs. And so we dove into figuring out why. What was the common thread? What was the pattern? Because I knew I wasn't making this up, right? I knew these observations meant something. And so what we've learned in the stats is that these are three key ones. The average wealth of a white family is 10 times the average wealth of a Black family.
And then it will take 242 years for the average Black family, that's median wealth, to catch up to the wealth of a white family today. That's if, not even if the disparity stopped, that's if white wealth just stopped right away, then it would take 242 years. As it is, it's not on the slide, but it's positive because Black wealth is going backwards, that by 2053, median Black wealth will be 0, which is terrifying.
Yes, 1 out of 3 families of color have a net worth of 0 or less
already,
versus 1 out of 12 white households.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One of Dyalekt's songs called Preach to the Choir. You want to tell them what the opening line is?
Yeah. I say slavery never ended. Yeah, F it. I said it. I cuss. I rarely cuss on rap songs, but I say, yeah, F it. I said it. Slavery never ended.
It is literally a direct correlation. The amount of time in this country where there were enslaved Africans was 245 years.
Yeah,
it is literally to the number.
Yeah,
years.
And in fact, in the wealth disparity, some of the people who've been doing the reparations research have found that the amount that is the disparity is roughly the amount.
It's around this. It's around $170,000.
Yeah, 70, 180. There's like, different breakdowns, but so it's definitely that. And when people are asking, when people ask that stuff, like, why are Black folks that can't get it like Asian people moved in? Because
because slavery.
Anyway, yeah, we talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I actually want to I know I'm probably jumping ahead, but I'm it's just at the tip of my tongue. I have to ask this, mention it. I think it has to be a part of this conversation, knowing what many of us already know in this conversation, because there's a lot of activists, right? There's movement work in any of our form of art, essentially. Especially representing persons of color, right? In their embodiment of their work. What does it look like? I know you have, Pamela, you and I talked at length about this, right? So we saw studies that came from out of Chicago, right? The South Side, where there's this universal income. And we're seeing it kind of be this pilot in other states, other regions around a universal income for artists, right? Because how can they possibly catch up to close that gap when they're independent? Typically they're an LLC if they're even established as such. But where can they get the support or the alleviation that would take some of the burden off of their feeling like they have to multitask? I don't want to say their passion, because it is a passion, but it's also their work, and to be seen and value in that, versus there's this complete divide between understanding that artists are a form of their work. It's a form truly of entrepreneurship, but the broader world doesn't truly see it that way. Not just yet. They see them as kind of as a convenience, as to when an artist is needed, as to when, we kind of want to do placemaking. Who should we kind of cherry pick to use at that moment in time to help bring forth the space? Can you talk a little bit about that, if you feel comfortable, or even Kayla, if you have also even dove in and kind of started to understand what would it look like for artists themselves to maybe push or to kind of shift the narrative of this acceptance of support for the artistry itself, but to then start to change the system and policies around language for what universal income or funding should look like to support them in this work.
You see this piece behind us?
Yeah.
It's by my brother Native Makare. He is a MC and a painter who was born in Nigeria, grew up in Brooklyn, and then moved out to France because in France they pay you to do art. They give you money and oftentimes
Housing.
space, yeah, to do your thing.
Art is
And
subsidized.
he was struggling here in Brooklyn, doing all sorts of arts, try and get by, a day job type of cat. And then he went out there and sells like 7-figure paintings and is in all of the big fancy places. It's ridiculous. And also, what is France known for? Wonderful visual art, right? You think of France, you think of painting. Here in the US, but I think Jackson Pollock and a few other cats like in the 70s got funding, and that's when we were known for that, when the US saw value in being competitive in that way.
Yeah, Kayla, one of the things I would love
Vanessa,
to hear from you is just your story and your journey around like going from an artist to an artist entrepreneur and having that mindset shift around, wait, like I have to learn the system so that I can do my art, not I have to learn the system and that means I won't be able to do my art.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big part of this.
It took a lot of courage because I had to go full stop. So I shared this story yesterday. I was in New York. I remember it like yesterday, and I was going to audition for Willy Wonka on Broadway. And, I walk into a typical cattle call audition. I see all the people, I see the table, the judges, and I say, you know what? I'm tired of this. I don't know what's going to happen. I may get this gig and it's going to last me a couple of months, but what about after that? What does money look like for me then? It's not promised. I'm mid 20s now. I've done a lot and I don't know when my credit score will improve, what property ownership looks like, what equity looks like. But why don't I know this? So, I love that you all talked about the racial wealth divide because a lot of people don't know what they don't know. And I didn't know, even though I paid $50,000 a year to go to school to hone my craft, anything about finances, money, investment, business, uh, you know, being an entrepreneur. That was not presented to me. It was told to me that if you would like to do that, take it as an elective or go back to school. Why should I have to go back to school? This is the schooling because I should be being prepared for life, but I wasn't. So it was a tough decision to make, but it was really freeing when I did make it because I got to sit with myself and ask the hard questions. And then I had to go into research and find free resources. And oh, by the way, my bank, which is a credit union that I'm loyal to in a completely other state. Why? Because different jurisdiction, different values, ethics, like these things I didn't even know that I could choose. But when I found out I could, I said yes to it. And they had free financial advising through a nonprofit organization that they contract with. I'm like, no one told me this. But again, you don't know what you don't know. You only go by what is presented to you, which is this is your life, choose to deal with it or not. And especially here in the United States, and I love that you all touched on that, you kind of have to make that decision like, okay, so I guess I'm just going to be the bottom of the totem pole because they don't value me in this country, or I just got to sell my soul and do something commercial. Like the decision making for artists is so limited that money is not even in your view until you just wake up and say, what about me? What about a family? What about the next generation? Before you can even start to take on policy and all these other things, you have to realize your own self-worth first. And that, I think that's where it really started for me.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I had shared this with someone just yesterday. Whomever you're banking with, traditional bank, credit union, I strongly advise that you approach them and ask them for sponsorship. The moment they're not willing to invest in you, you withdraw your funds, you go elsewhere, and you find that bank, that nonprofit, that CDFI, if they have some sort of financial structure, and some CDFIs do, have them be the ones that are backing and investing you. That's where our money belongs. And we have that choice. The little bit of choice that we have is how we invest our money, not only in ourselves, obviously like how we spend our money in our communities, local coffee shops, what have you, but it's truly like where our money is sitting. So I'll speak for myself. Yes, biweekly pay, feels great when it arrives in the account. It might be like holding there, right? Because it's like pending the day before. But to me, I'm like, I'm lending my bank the opportunity to give out these like 7.58% loans because like my little measly chump change is sitting there in the interim. And if you're not backing me and supporting me, I can't even allow you to use some of my chump change in the interim, even if it is 6 hours, even if it is 12 hours, while like you're not supporting me. And you're trying to hit me with the late fees. Like I can't have that. Like it can't be one and two. Like you got to pick.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this was, I don't know who told me this, but it was said, go to lunch with your banker. Have you sat down with any representative of your bank before? Have you done that? Have you gone in to say, hey, I'm the reason why you all are in operation. Can you please tell me what my options are? How can you all work with me? And I agree fully with Krista. If they're not willing to do that and build a relationship, you shouldn't be there.
Yeah. I think that I've seen so many clients who are like, I've just had the same bank that I've had since I was 19. I never changed. And I feel kind of okay about them. They're probably horrible. They've probably been horrible to me in the past, but the idea of switching banks is just such a chore,
It's
right?
like the dating relationship stuff. It
Yeah.
really, it's parallel. Where you're like, oh, I don't want to get back out there. They're
I
probably
gotta
gonna treat me
change all
bad
my I
too.
gotta change all my auto pays. I gotta change all of this stuff. And I think that a huge part of the reason why a lot of these institutions stay in power is they make it really inconvenient for you to move around. And I think if you can figure out how to find agency within the financial institutions that you interact with, that's a huge self-advocacy thing that you can take for yourself and also take to your community.
Can I also throw in the part that's not your fault? Also,
Oh yeah.
it's these banks on the art tip are really good at marketing. Banks aren't public services.
They're businesses.
They don't exist for the good. A bank is no different from a Foot Locker. But in our heads, the bank feels like the post office, right? It exists for a purpose and it does the thing that it's supposed to do. And if you're going to get things in your life, you need to have a bank. So it feels like it's something that's above us that we can't even question or challenge.
Yeah. And one thing that has been really exciting about technology is that there's a lot more competition for these bigger banks with these smaller banks and these smaller tech companies who are able to offer better, less costly, and more beneficial services. I think about, for instance, we've been telling all our clients now to get high yield savings accounts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of banks out there, a lot of online banks who are online only, don't have brick and mortar. I'm thinking about Ally Bank, Capital One 360, Barclays Savings, Marcus by Goldman Sachs. You can literally Google high yield savings, and they'll probably give you a list of the banks that are paying the most. High yield savings accounts are paying around 4.3% interest right now on your money just to have it sit there. Just like what you were saying, Krista, about the money working for you. Your brick and mortar, Chase, Wells Fargo, like Citibank, they're paying 0.01% on your money.
Chase is paying 0.01%
instead of 4.3%. You can move your money whenever you want.
I always said I don't mess with Chase because I'm not going to go work with anybody whose name is run after you. Right? Come on. They be telling on themselves on the art tip. Wells Fargo uses red and yellow as their color scheme. There's like the only bank that does that. Who else uses red and yellow? McDonald's. Exactly. Every fast food place. My color psychology peoples, y'all know that red and yellow is meant for impulse buys. What bank is telling you to try to get some impulse buys? You know they grimy.
The fries are good, though. The fries are good. Okay.
Ooh, no, she just say the fries are good. No, but you just made a point though. When you speak about marketing, you're bringing up the presence of art again, the presence of artists. We run the world. Yeah. If you didn't know, artists are performing in the top percentile of global GDP. That's gross domestic product. Nothing moves or happens unless there is first relationship, trust, community. Only artists can do that, whether it's through a visual or an ad or a video, whatever. Sometimes it may take somebody to flip in the air to, in a commercial to get you excited and to wake up. That was an exchange. Now, to them, it's a transactional exchange, but it's really a human exchange. that then triggers the impulse to make a decision and to buy. So one of the things that I've done as part of my personal financial literacy journey, y'all, is write a book called A Broke Dancer's Guide to Success. And you can get it on Amazon. It's 15 bucks, just a basic budgeting and professional guide. But it is about the reframing and the shifting of how we see ourselves. So going from being broke and not having any choices to being an empowered decision maker. Like, wait, I can take a moment and I can, like I said earlier, put myself in the seat of my own life and make decisions that are sustainable and good for me in the long run, knowing that without me, the world doesn't move. So, how can I do that now? No one has to know. I don't have to get any approval from the giants and big guys and gals out there, but what can I do in my life in the here and now to move forward and not feel like I'm just in the rat race? It's in the little things, it's in the learning of the acronyms. It's also in the big things. It's sitting down with a wealth advisor, with a financial, just like I love that point that you made, Dee, earlier about the bank being like a post office and you don't think that you can be above them. That's so true. Sometimes it's like church on a Sunday. You don't think you can go to a church unless it's on a Sunday. Why shouldn't you? It's supposed to be a service organization for people. So, how can we give ourselves access once again? We get the knowledge. We sit with the people who have the information so we can start feeling better and doing better when it comes to money.
Yeah. That has me thinking, so we're talking about money, what we have, what we don't have, what we wish we had. How, like, I'm thinking back, like, from like the business lens that I have, right? So we talk about a business plan, right? We talk about like, how do you find and decide on like what your value is? And so I know that in some of the spaces I've been in, right, like there's conversations around like, I didn't create anything, right? But like those folks who are amazingly talented, far beyond like what I can possibly do, I'll make a stick figure for you. That's what you'll get from me, okay? But like my stick figure, and I'm just like, this is worth in my mind $2. But like then there's like this kindergartner who's my competition because they also can make probably a better stick figure because now they're gonna like throw on like the bubble shoes and like make the like Mickey Mouse mitten hands, right? Like they can add more. How do artists really define without feeling? And this kind of leads into scarcity, like how can they build without feeling the competition of that kindergartner who did a better job than me at 35 years old on the stick figure, and then move forward with like being solid and understanding and confident in what their price point is without having to budge. Because I know, and I speak this at volumes, not all money is good money. It's okay to leave some money on the table. It almost, I think, feels like it makes them circle back to you more to wonder why you didn't take the money initially. Why weren't you a slave to the dollar the first time?
Ooh, what's really funny is I just had a meeting about hiring a stick figure artist for a music video I'm putting out on Halloween. I was actually calculating and talking about what the value would be for that type of art, and what that time is worth.
Go ahead.
Well, the tough thing about that is it's a fluctuating market, right? The big important thing about it, because when you talked about competing with the other folks, is that there is no healthy competition without collaboration. You know this because the most popular form of collaboration, which everybody uses as a really poorly done metaphor, is sports, right? Sports is this place where everybody gets to have a fair shake. It's all done well. They compete really well because they're not 30 or 40 different companies. They're all one company in different divisions. They share their revenue. It doesn't matter who goes to the Super Bowl. Everybody's getting paid. They take care of each other so that their competition is actually the smallest, least important part of what they're doing. They're able to talk to each other about what matters. As a musician, I used to get told when I would throw parties in the nightclubs and I would make 20 grand for the bar and they'd give me 500 bucks. They would tell me not to talk to the other musicians because they would steal my gig. When really, even if they were my direct competition, I needed to be talking to them so that we could build something more together.
Yeah. I wanted to share a tool actually, because I think that before we figure out how much money we should ask for from other people, we should first figure out how much money we actually need to live. What should your rate be, not what your rate needs to be based on what someone else told you. So I want to actually share how to calculate your first rate. And we're going to go through this just a little bit. So the things you need to factor in, and I have a spreadsheet for y'all because that's my jam. So it's okay. The formulas fill out themselves. That's my art. So the things you need to factor in when setting your first rate, regardless of what someone tells you you should be charging, because that doesn't matter. The context that's important is like, what do you need to live as an artist, not just to survive as an artist, but to thrive as an artist, right? And so you need to factor in your hourly rate at past jobs, any additional tax liability that you're going to owe, health insurance and other benefits, and the hours that you're not getting paid directly when you're marketing, sales, admin, sending those invoices, you know, pitching those gigs, whatever it is. And so just as an example, if you want to make $50,000, your payroll taxes that you're all of a sudden responsible for because you are self-employed is around 7.65%. So you're actually paying an extra $3,800 in taxes by being self-employed. Your medical insurance you're paying out of pocket is around $400 a month. And maybe you'd be getting a 401k match at your other job. So this $1,500 is for your retirement in the future. So actually a $50,000 base salary job is actually worth $60,000 total comp, which equals out to about $29 an hour if you worked 40 hours a week for 52 weeks a year. But you're freelancing, so you got to double it. And that means that you actually have to charge $60 an hour, not $29 an hour. And so there's actually a spreadsheet we can put in the chat here if you want to do this yourself, where you fill in not necessarily based out your last job, because a lot of us, I don't remember the last time I had a job.
Or it could be like the salary you want.
What's the salary you want, right?
Yeah.
What is that base salary that you want to have to live? And then play around with it. All you have to do is fill in the green ones and everything else automatically fills in. And figure out how much do you actually need to live, and then what does your freelance rate need to be? And when you can start from what your hourly rate should be based on what your needs are and what your goals are, then you're able to come from a place of confidence. You're not making this up. This number didn't come out of thin air. It's a number that you know you need for yourself.
Ooh, I like this. Maybe useful to others relating to this topic. Designer Jessica Hish offers a 2-hour course on calculating your rates based on your living needs. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank
That's
you for
awesome.
sharing.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you for sharing. And yeah, Pam, if you want to drop that link too for folks, if they want to pull it aside as well. That's really, I'm like, that's got me pondering. I'm not even an artist. I'm like, yeah, how should I actually be like spending and like putting aside? And especially like when it comes to that 401k, that's something that it's not really a topic for us to discuss at this session, but it is something that as I like to speak for myself. I think of myself as still being young. And I'm like, I have time. I'll get to it. It'll happen. I'll hit big. And I'm not talking about the ladder, but I'm talking about like maybe if it is in the form of art, but to really be able to start to financially plan out what the trajectory of my work is in the immediate, in the future, and that what that looks like for my lifestyle, for my community or my family, what have you. Can we talk?
Before we go on, I just wanna we call it Shabbat. I just wanna amen and say thank you to Pam on that, because one, you gotta quantify the information that you need. And you just presented to us something that a lot of artists don't get. We get advice, we get some nuggets, but you're giving us some real tools that we can work with. Thank you for that chart. That's really good. And then also thank you for the person with the link share. There's another tool if you're a teaching artist on the Mid-Atlantic region. I think it's like the New England all the way down to West Virginia, and that's a teaching artist calculator, and it factors in your demographic and the cost of living and all those things for you to consider what your salary or your hourly rate should be. And then this kind of answers Krista's earlier question about what sort of propelled me into becoming an entrepreneur or entrepreneur, if you will. I found myself doing a lot of teaching moments. So I was intrinsically becoming a consultant because I would go into nonprofit organizations or public schools, whatever the case may be, and they just weren't getting certain things like, oh, why are you giving us an invoice for your materials? Because I had to buy materials to do this class. That cost me a couple $100. why are you suggesting that we should consider paying you for travel? Because the amount that you're paying me is eating up the cost that it takes me to get here. It was a lot of why are you or why is this important? I just kept finding myself being a trailblazer and either asking questions or answering questions that weren't asked by other teaching artists. And I was just like, I can't take it. They need to know and they don't know. So they're kind of just skating over things like, oh, they're happy teaching. Oh, she's happy doing her art. I'm just like, I am a 30-year-old woman twirling around in a ballet skirt. Do you think that I just enjoy doing this all my life? I do it for the kids. Yes, I love the kids, but y'all gotta pay me. But they just didn't know these things. When we're talking about value, and that's also what my campaign It's Lit is about. It's encouraging artists, yes, give her the information you need so you can be fully equipped to walk into spaces confident and worthy, and also do the work on your back and your personal life, but also for funders and organizations and institutions, giving them that like, hey, you don't know what you don't know either, and if you do know it, it's time to stop playing dumb, because we had enough talks during the pandemic about, oh, let's revamp, let's do things better. Okay, what's the better? We want to see it now because we feel it, don't we? I feel it. I feel inflation all over. And as far as I'm concerned, my life as an artist, that hadn't changed. So this rise has to happen. It just has to happen. So I just wanted to say thank you for the tools, because we want to give people what they need to go forward.
Yeah. And I think this goes back, Krista, to what you even alluded to around like a universal basic income or guaranteed income, right? And why artists, to have that stability of knowing that $500 a month is coming or $250 a month is coming. So you have the space to do your art and create.
And even be able to make those decisions, people talking about like, oh, do I love this? I guess I love this for this thing, and all the knots that you twist yourself into to be like, yeah, this is all right.
Yeah. And the concept, I think, is I'm really excited that it's catching on, because I think when the idea first came up, there was a lot of backlash around like, oh, you're just giving people money. They're just going to throw it away. They're not going to know what to do with it. They're going to mess it up. And it goes back to this narrative around
the MacArthur Genius Grant is not available to anyone who isn't already rich and famous.
Yeah.
They'll just give you that money for free if you're already rich.
Yeah, but it's that narrative. That's again a narrative, right? That's this myth and this belief that we were all taught, like, oh, money has to be earned. Why? We all made it up in the first place. Why does it have to be earned? Why can't it be used as a tool that you give to people so that it can create other things? But instead of questioning that, we just go with that narrative, and artists have the ability to change that narrative. And that's what's so exciting about things like seeing universal basic income programs for artists. And if we can push for that and say, this is what we need so that we can create and so that we can show you what a better world looks like, because that's what artists do.
Nice. That's a good pause right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It leads me to, in my work, managing, this director of programs role, which for some of you who joined late, I am with an organization, Arts Business Collaborative. We are based out of New York, but we do national work. We have national partners that we engage through our fiscal sponsorship model. And then we also offer like technical assistance. We are developing, I've already developed it, a co-learning curriculum. The idea is that new projects that are interested in being fiscal partners of ours, there's about 7 in the queue. They will be joining us as of January, and there's a year-long curriculum build out. The idea is to develop a cohort, a community, so that you have folks that you can further engage, ask probe questions, be one another's support. That's kind of also part of like building like marketing, right? Like when we think about marketing, like we know what it means to be an entrepreneur, to start out. And I see entrepreneurship, and I use that interchangeably, because entrepreneurship is also used in the lens of the nonprofit sector. If you are looking to move in the nonprofit sector, you still have to have a business plan. You still have to be able to know how to like decide on your mission, your vision, like the intentionality of what it is that you're doing. And then who's your audience? These are all things that within the nonprofit sector apply to the LLC or to the S Corp and so forth. So the idea is to build out this co-learning community. And in that time, as I'm building, I hope is that I'll be able to engage funders who would be considering with that first cohort of monies that we can actually back in this means and ways of some sort of universal income. It would certainly be small, but it is an objective of ours. And then we're aiming too that towards the end of or sometime in 2024, the potential of having a CDFI. Many CDFIs, those are the community and organizations that support and are more rooted in the community. They are the ones who would be lending. And some of them are still at market rate based on what the traditional banks are, what their interest. And there's also some like challenges with CDFI, right? Because you can only get a loan if you are coming from privilege yourself and you have an asset to leverage up. I don't know about y'all, but like I'm not leveraging up like my brick and like my home, like where I reside, where my children rest their head for the sake of being able to have like lending, right? Like there's many more hoops that persons of color have to jump through to secure. Like when I say the bag, I'm not talking about like the bag that's like Warren Buffett bag. I'm talking about like a little something, a little something. I don't even know how to define what little
My
something.
house.
So
Bag.
so, I think part of also my hope for 2024 is there's an organization on the West Coast called Justice Funders, and they are focused solely on actually doing what at least myself and folks who work in philanthropy and grassroots organizing and like those who are loud and making noise around like the anti-capitalist system, even though we live in the embodiment of that, and I'm guilty. I get Starbucks every day. The idea is like, how do we get funders to truly put like the money where their mouth is? Like they'll say like, we're in alignment, we support, we love, we envision, we see this thing, but do understand too that foundations in a sense are only clearing a percentage of the profit that they have earned, right, in investment, right? So how do we even have that conversation? There's kind of this happy medium that has to happen, whether it's an artist or again, any other nonprofit entity or entrepreneurs around the further conversation of not only feeling like, how do I kind of find a ways and means to break even? How can we get the philanthropic space to also find a way and means to break even with like the community that within the mission and the embodiment of who they are, this is what they're tasked to do to be able to support X, Y, Z. And then that also takes I want to say the burden, because the burden will continue to live. It's a trauma that has been indoctrinated in communities of color around scarcity. And that is something that I would love, Pamela, Dyalekt, Kayla, if we can really kind of touch on that, right? How do I know we talked about collaboration, right, versus competition. How do we kind of know it's okay or feel okay to invest in ourselves more? I know as an entrepreneur, there's been times where I poured into my building and my business, and that meant that the utilities and the lights were on there. But man, back at home, I was like, all right, guys, we're all in one room and you got to layer up on blankets. But I got to wait 2 weeks till I can get paid to make this happen.
Dig that. I dig that word. Kayla, do you want to kick it off? You were saying some really great stuff yesterday around the scarcity mentality. I'd love to hear your thoughts again for everybody.
Oh, scarcity. That's a big one. Now, to be honest, I don't recall what I said yesterday, but here's what I'll say today. You know that quote about, oh, if there's not a seat at the table, just pull one up, flip the table. Let's get a bookshelf, okay? Let's build a building. Let's create some kind of greenhouse. Like whatever you envision is what needs to come to fruition. What we're seeing is not only it, and that's the brilliance of what artists can do. What has been the paradigm forever is, all right, now y'all are really good, you're talented, but we're only taking one, and I know there's just one, so hope you're going to be that one, especially if you're a person of color. If you're Black, if you're Asian, if you're Latino, if you're in whatever what they're looking for, if it's a typecasting situation or just to check that box off of diversity, you go in knowing that it's going to be brutal and you hope that you can claw your way out and be the one. And that's what makes us put these blinders on and become workhorses instead of looking to each other like, you know what? You have a great idea. You are really smart at this. You have those skills and this acumen. Let's work together. So I think we're just starting to wake up to that possibility and come out of that very hard stricken way of thinking and seeing opportunity and starting to create that more for ourselves and do the work so that we have it. It's sustainable and also the next generation can benefit from it. Scarcity. Yeah, it's I think of growing pains when I think of scarcity. Um, because especially if you're an artist, there's such great risk, right? You don't want to be that difficult artist that no one wants to work with. You don't want to lose the opportunity, right? You don't want to prove people right or let your family down. If you are that first generation creative in your family or artist, say, oh, we told you to have a backup plan. You have so many voices going on in your head to finally decide to be the one that says, there is something more for me and I am worthy of it. Let me go see what that is. And placing that demand, it's a bit spiritual, but placing that demand on the universe and saying, please show me. But I guarantee you, I'll give you an example. I have been saying that I want to learn more about stocks, not in my teaching, not in my education, not in my purview at all. But to your point, Dialect, earlier, yeah, I won't do Nike, I'll do Converse. You don't know that, they're the big brothers, but why not just look at the brands in your daily life and consider investing in stock in that way so that you can feel more of a sense of empowerment? So I said, okay, let's go on this journey, let's learn about stocks. My small voice is like, what are you talking about? That's capitalistic. That's it. And I'm like, hey, I want to learn. Let's see what there is to it. Couple weeks later, I'm coming back from a trip. I'm on the train. I meet a guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I just taught a couple people how to flip $2,000 into 10K. You want to learn? How much does it cost? Nothing. I just want people to learn." I put the thought and the seed of intention out there, and it met me. It found me. And now I'm working with someone really awesome that is just passionate about empowering and educating people of color about stocks and money. So, yeah, I think it starts with just knowing that you are worthy and getting out of that old way of thinking when it comes to scarcity and diving into the immense possibilities.
Yeah, you hit me really hard with that proving them right line. I think many of us just like got the image of like, so many times we're like, oh, I don't want to prove any of the detractors right. So I'm going to do all of these things to pigeonhole, and I'll shut myself off and I'll shut myself off. And oftentimes many of us artists who are like principled artists, you're in art for like a moral reason, you find yourself supporting things and projects where you're like, this, I might as well have just gone and done the Slack thing, done the thing that was outside of my value. As a rapper, when I was first brought into music place and the executives asked me about like what kind of gangster stuff that I had. And that's always my thing now that I think about is like, if I'm going to do this kind of thing now, if I'm going to put myself in that position, I might as well just put out them gangster rap songs when I was 19 and, satisfy that condition. It's really difficult for us to forgive ourselves for not going along with the system, because it shows that if you don't, they'll beat you down with it. And that's art stuff too. Pam, I know you want to pull up some things to.
I did, because I feel like that. I think this goes back to questioning things that we think are just how they are because that's how it's always been, that it's just there's no way to change it.
That's your thing with this.
Yeah. And I think as artists, there's the ability to imagine something different, because this is something actually, Dyalekt, that you showed me. Rent used to be payable at the end of the month. So it was not a rent is due on the first of the month, because the service wasn't finished. Letting you live there, you should be able to pay rent at the end of the month. Security deposits are also considered illegal because they were considered coercive penalties.
And this changed around 1866. I don't know if you history buffs are familiar with anything around that happened around that time period, but like basically, I mean, one of the big foundations of the stuff that we say about finances, anti-Blackness is the root of discrimination in America. And when you find a discriminatory practice, this is like part of my really long series of discriminatory practices that started out as just some jerks in power being like, yeah, we don't want Black people to have stuff.
Yeah. So they said, oh, rent's due on the 1st.
And then they did it.
And they were able to pay the rent on the 1st.
Yeah, shout out to the
ancestors. And they said, oh no, first and last. Now it costs everyone $10,000 to move apartments.
I mean, that's the same thing with tipping. How people who work in service and they get paid the paltry sum, that tipping comes from anti-Blackness too. It's why we often say to like people who like, hey, look, I think that you should care about Black folks because, empathy, you should care about your fellow person. But even if you're not of African descent, you should care about what has happened and what is happening to Black people in America, because it is going to happen to you if they get away with it.
I wanted to share this too, because in talking about scarcity, there are plenty of people out there who want to make us feel like there's scarcity, and who put systems in place to make us feel like there's scarcity.
That's
what this is.
I've been talking about this a lot with some of my organizer peoples. They talk all this stuff about crabs in the barrel. Oh, we crabs in the barrel. We crabs in the barrel. I love the crabs. I only hate the barrel. Why are we mad at the people who are caught in the same condition? Right?
Preach.
That's good.
And again, that's art. That's a wonderful metaphor. Crabs in a barrel. The things that are done to us to take away our power. When you look at what people are trying to do with the word woke today, it reminds me of what they did to watermelon back in the day. Do y'all know that watermelon was the tool of Black economic liberation? When slavery, ended, right? Black people knew about watermelons because it came from Africa. They brought the seeds over. It grew in small places, in harsh conditions. So it was the first thing they were able to take to market, to be able to feed not only their families, but other people. And you've probably seen some old-timey ad about someone holding a watermelon. It's this like stereotypical depiction. The metaphor is corny. It's not even a good metaphor. They said that holding a watermelon with two hands meant that Black people were too lazy to do anything else with their hands. And the smile that a watermelon looks like meant that Black people weren't doing so bad. It's a corny, lazy metaphor, but they did such a good job putting that into people's heads. My biracial behind, excuse me, I know light-skinned folks, we always be shouting out our ethnicity, but I'm saying, when I was at my white side of family's family reunion, my Black mom was like, don't you eat no watermelon in front of those white folks. What? Why are we not proud of this tool of our ancestors' economic liberation? It's because of art. And when we say we have the ability to change things, I say this because we've seen it be done in the negative side. So that's one of my soapboxes I'd be getting on.
So then how do we make sure that we're protecting, and I'm thinking of like the term exploitative, that kindergarten, and I was like, if you need a doodle drawing, there you go, right? How do we make sure that we're not exploitative? Or how do we make sure that folks don't ensure that that they can exploit us? Because we do live in this construct. And while I think we do our best, some far better, many more than me, right? Far better than I. Some maybe even far better than them. How do we make sure that we still stay true to who we are without feeling the need to consider or waver or shift away from our ideologies, our beliefs within art?
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is really fundamental. Money is still a taboo. It's still rude to talk about money. You still feel shame when you talk about money. You feel shame if you don't have enough. You feel shame if you feel like you have too much. And I think that
how many of you have gotten the big gig and then spent it on your peoples who didn't get the big gig? Yeah, thrown in a little extra because your peoples didn't get it.
I can't believe I got it. Do I even deserve having this? Right. And you don't talk about it. And so this idea of money is this big scary thing where we all feel alone in it. And I think if we can figure out how to break down the taboo and have real conversations around it and figure out how to break away the shame from it, I think that's the really first fundamental step, is like figuring out how to talk to your friends and your colleagues and your peers, how to share how you did get that gig, how you came up with that rate. Share, like, if you had credit card debt, how you got out of it. If you have credit card debt now and you don't know how to get out of it, right? There's all this stigma around this whole like financial system and the fact that we have to live in it. And I think that just talking about it and starting to like practice saying things out loud, talking about if you're saving money, talking about if you're having a hard time saving money, talking about if you feel like you're not getting paid enough, talking about if you feel like that this funder exploited you, or that you should stay away from this organization, or this organization's been really great, and to be able to really spread that within the community, I think that's the first fundamental step.
Yeah, that really is and well, I mean, because this is big, like you said, this is big, heavy, fundamental stuff. And like, Krista, you throw it out there, I'm like, yeah, like this, like a world peace kind of question of like, how do we make sure we don't get exploited? Because even, you know, I've been in so many situations where despite everyone's best efforts, you turn and look back at it and you're like, oh man,
it happened.
there's a lot of abuse and exploitation that happens. It's like such a very American thing where it's baked into a lot of the things that we do.
And then we're also taught to like hide that if it happens. You know, there's repercussions for being the one who like says something out loud. And I think, how do we break that down too?
Yeah. Kayla, what are your thoughts?
Woo! They said it all. That's it right there. That's good. That's it. I mean, getting rid of the shame, getting rid of the fact that it's taboo, talking about it, being unapologetic, even if you're not supported. We need to continue to use our voices because the next generation is watching us. That's really what it boils down to for me. When you know that a thing isn't working, it's one thing to decide to do nothing about it for yourself, but then to see the matriculation affect others and the next generation, and you're still going to feel the brunt of that. You can't pass judgment if there's nothing that you've done or contributed to change the effort, and we can. I think even in just small ways, if you're a parent, encouraging your kids to put the phone down and talk at the dinner table. You know, Michelle Obama talked about her upbringing and how their family really valued sitting down at dinner, talking about their day. We underestimate the small things, but the more that we hear each other's stories, the more better we can relate and we can value each other's point of view and, you know, discuss moments of, you know, points of disagreement. You know, what I see as a trend right now is that everyone wants to do what feels good. Or hello, it's groupthink. Yeah. So we've got to get away from the assimilation of groupthink in order to break cycles, stop conditioning, and also recognize when we are a part of the things that we disagree with. It's okay to disagree. I think we certainly could get to that point and challenge thinkers and speakers to do it in a healthy way, so that it's not this rebellious, wild thing that no one wants to pay attention to, but it's constructive, it's intentional. I'm not perfect, but I try my best when I sign up for newsletters, at least to like read my emails and say, okay, American for the Arts, they're having some meeting going on. You know, can I sign up to petition for something? Who is in office? Like if I can do that at least once a quarter or even once a year, that's my social and moral responsibility to know who's in what seats and making these decisions. You know, I may not be that person that of color to make impact by sitting in the seat, but might know someone who knows someone to tell them, hey, check this out. You may need to apply for this. You know, there are other examples where you can sign up to be a panelist on, you know, diversity decision making or grant decision making or these kinds of things, and encourage people to do it now. You don't have to have a certain kind of credential. You don't need to be this young or this old. Just get involved. For me, that's diversity. It's not just color and ethnicity. It's what you have to bring that is not currently present. That's what's going to diversify this pool of conversation about money so that people can stop saying the same things, because that's what's going to happen. We've got to shift the paradigm. We've got to change the narrative, but we've got to use our voices to make it happen. Whether you're making slides, whether you're sending a text message, whether you're sharing a post, it goes a long way if you can just make impact with one person, starting with yourself.
Ooh, I wanted to jump on real quick the thing that you're saying about the small changes, because I want to say just to the artists out here is that these small changes in our art are really important as well. When you're putting together your art as a business, you know, we do like the one-page business plan. Everybody has their own version of that. And the first thing about like, what problem are you solving? And I always used an example of like a DJ, right? You can be solving a problem as a DJ of like, there's not enough booty shaking on the dance floor. That is an important problem to solve. It's okay for that because all these little pieces, we do need more people dancing. It's going to be good for your health. It's going to be good for your mental health. It's going to be good for building community, all that kind of good stuff. And it seems like such a small thing. And oftentimes our art seems like, oh, I'm not doing the change the world art. I'm just doing these landscapes, or I'm just doing a dance piece. And you are changing people's lives, and just know and be empowered by the fact that you do that, and be intentional about it.
And get
Yeah.
paid.
Yeah.
And get paid for
And
it.
get paid for it, y'all.
Yeah, I have to give a little shout out to an individual on this call. Kennedy. Kennedy actually has been someone I've been engaging quite a bit, really since I started with Arts Business Collaborative mid-February of this year. And their work is remarkable. And I almost feel, at least from the seat that I'm in the organization I serve, with my network of whomever, that their work, I cannot put a point for the value of the work that they do, because it is that impressive. It is that moving. And so most times, and I haven't said this to Kennedy, although Kennedy gets emails that I share with them from time to time, but for the most part, they are always in the back of my mind. Anytime there's a funding opportunity, anytime I see something around like a national scope of work, RFP, LOI, that ties in literature, history, Black relevance. They always come to my mind. So even though, and again, Kennedy's hearing this for the first time ever, I don't know how they feel about it. It might be awkward putting them on the spot. Sorry, I do that. But their work is that valuable. So even if you don't know, if you have no idea if someone is championing you, if someone is even, tuning you in, watching your moves, there might be something about the work that you're doing that has left a print on them in some way. That, again, there's so much. I know I've connected Kennedy with different folks that I know, similar Dyalekt, who does DJing hip hop, connected them with another internal project that we have currently with us, that actually is based out of Southside Chicago, and they're really hyper focused on JIT and footwork and kind of the story through that. So just know that as an artist, and again, just from my seat, my purview, and I'm even sure from the lenders, even philanthropy, folks see you, hear you, and it's not that it's not our ability to take control right now for what we see the value of your work that's needed. We are trying to change, at least in my world, broader systems to see the value of the work that you're doing, and not just seeing you as this individual who's doing and creating something fluffy. That's this false narrative that I do believe that folks typically seem to think of artistry. But instead that no, they are our historians. They are our placemakers and designers and community engagement. And so if you want to hear that in a different term that's called grassroots or organizing, fine. If that's the term that makes you feel good as to why you're moving money into a certain direction, then have at it. But don't continue to give up on what your passion or what you're rooted in doing. Folks are listening and watching and hearing. We're trying to get other folks to listen and hear and find value in this work just as well.
I'm gonna shout out Kennedy. I make music about literature, history, and Black relevance. So I'll get you on a track if you want to rap. I'm saying. I actually got a researcher on a joint. We took 5 white papers about debt and race and made a rap song about debt rules everything around me. So what I'm saying.
No, well, wait a minute. What? Do you know that Wu-Tang Clan, cash rules everything around me? Cream, get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, y'all. That is our slogan for the campaign slogan. That's our song. That's our, yes.
I love it. I love breaking down how that song is actually an anti-capitalist song. When people talk about oh, cream, it's about, because they love talking about how Black people are obsessed with money because they heard rap songs about money, and rappers are obsessed with money. And when you listen to the rap songs, even the ones where they're talking about celebrating money, they're talking about when they didn't have it in the juxtaposition. And Cream is straight up talking about, I went to jail, life as a shorty shouldn't be so rough, talking about the bad economic conditions and what it creates for us. So whoo, yeah, I love it. I'm glad that you
also we should be finally celebrate and champion again, that we ain't talking about the bag Warren Buffett. We talking about this little tiny bag. Let us have damn it. Let us have a little bit. Damn.
The shopping bag. We talking about the $1.99 grocery tote